Ladies and gentlemen and variations thereof, welcome to the Selectives Lorecast, a casual Elder Scrolls podcast. If we ever change the name of this, I'm never going to be able to, it's taken me all these years just to be able to get that down to a patter. And now, I don't know. Anyway, my name's Rhett, and tonight with me today are...
I'm James, also known as Aramithius.
Zell's also known as Zell's.
Yes. And today we are talking about Sermon 33, which means we're talking about cameos and poop. Mm-hmm. And yes, Felix, late arrival. If it happens today, it'll happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so 30. So to recap really quick, Baka, is that a Holy Mountain reference? So you are feces. Can turn yourself into gold. So the Scripture of the Mace was last was the last one, and we got done talking about how truth is determined in the Elder Scrolls universe and arguably in real life, and how unreliable the concept is in general. Yes. And we're going to continue to bend the it is also a Holy Mountain reference, okay? It is and so today we're going to talk a little bit about what bending the truth can get you in the Elder Scrolls universe. Or manipulating the truth, certainly. So Vivec left the litany hall of the false thinking temple where he had brooded for so long, creating the scripture of the pounding light. Okay. So the scripture of the pounding light refers to the scripture of the mace. The pounding part we get because you're hitting things with a hammer, a great hammering. Light, I'm going to assume, refers to enlightenment or wisdom.
I read this as leaving the cinema.
Oh, okay.
In all honesty, leaving the false thinking temple, because I don't know whether this happens anymore, or to anyone anymore. But I remember when I was young, whenever I would go into the cinema, I would have a headache for about the first 20 minutes after leaving because I just wasn't used to that level of light anymore.
Yeah,
and so I just kind of see that, and I just think this the scripture of the pounding light just makes me think he's been shut up somewhere dark and horrible, and is now coming blinking into the light again, and everything
the Plato's
goes there.
cave, possibly?
Maybe.
If we're talking about truth.
Yeah.
You know?
Coming blinking from the cave into the light, I can see that.
When you leave the vault in Fallout. Yeah. Extreme intoxication or extreme fatigue or sensory overload where all light seems to pulsate.
Hangover, yeah.
Yeah. And went back into the space that was not a space, so we're back into Chim again. From the provisional house, he looked into the middle world to find the seventh monster called Lyrock. Okay, let's not do his name yet. Let's not do its name yet. Okay, Lyrock was born of Vivec's second aperture and was thrown out of the pomegranate banquet by a member of the Sweeps, another forgotten guild. So, we ever get who the Sweeps were? Well, yes. Apparently there's a lore entry in UASP. A guild of broom handlers.
What?
for real?
Who were well compensated for sweeping up the ash that fell from Red Mountain into nearby cities in Vardenfell.
I need a reference for that. That's certainly post.
Yeah, UOL interview with a dark elf. Dave Humphrey and a Bethesda employee over email and published on the old UESP website.
Oh, wow. Wow, that is an obscure mid-90s reference.
All right, then.
Yeah.
Well, not mid-90s, but yeah. That's...
During the unholy union, but they were aware of its nature, and Lyrock ascended into the heavens. The guild evidently disbanded at some point and became largely forgotten to history. Yeah, they did.
Yeah, absolutely.
Utterly.
Wow.
Yeah, but I also find that start a little weird because it talks about, because it goes from them. Vivec talks about Vivec going back to the space that is not space, and then from the provisional house he looks into the middle world, and that's sort of a standard opening for several of the lessons. But there's, as far as I can remember with the other ones, this is sort of the first one that gives you and this is what happened before sort of recap. It in quite that fashion, which just feels a little odd.
Yeah,
I don't know quite why that makes a difference, but it just kind of stands out a little to me. But I don't know.
Yeah, that's probably significant. It could be that that it needed to be mentioned that Vivec had brooded for so long creating the scripture of the pounding light. So maybe this is to illustrate how much of a toll talking about the truth is for Vivec.
Yep.
Is light associated with divinity earlier? Doesn't he talk about putting on armor of light?
Mm-hmm.
So is it maybe the trial of pounding in terms of going through Kim?
Yeah, maybe it's also Vivek sometimes refers to the power of enlightenment and knowledge as being fire or light.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's something about what happened in the false thinking temple, because I've just done a text checked search, and the previous references are all then Vivek left place where Z was before and went back to the provisional house. There's no remarks about Vivek's state of mind or anything. So I'm just curious about whether that so the scripture of the pounding light, it's saying something about how important truth is. Is I think all I can pull from that at this point.
Anyway, the sweep did not take it for the monster that it was, and so he did not expect it to fly from his hand and into the heavens. So here's what we're talking about here. We're talking about I don't think, do they ever actually outright say that Lyrock is a big turd? I don't think they do.
Did once.
That it was born from the second aperture is supposed to be a reference to the anus, and so you're supposed to sort of infer, by sort of sneaking it past the censorship, that that this is a poop, and so a member of the Sweeps Guild picks it up, which is all right, and to be fair, it is supposed to look like a stone. And so it flies from his hand into the heavens and says, I am born of golden wisdom and powers that should have forever been unalike. This is a reference to the pomegranate banquet.
Yep.
With this nature, I am invited into the hidden heaven, by which he meant the scaled blanket made of not stars whose number is 13. This is the snake.
Yeah.
The serpent constellation. Lyrock became full of foolishness, haggling with the Void Ghost who hides in the religions of all men. So the Void Ghost has been mentioned before.
It's Lorcan.
It sort of is.
Okay.
We'll get to that. Lyrock, haggling with the Void Ghost who hides in the religions of all men. The Void Ghost said, stay with me a full 100 years and I will give you a power that no divinity will dare disobey. So you can... it is easy to say, I think people have argued that the Void Ghost is Lorcan. As a matter of fact, UESP argues that.
Yeah.
That Lorcan hides in the religions of all men is also it's easy to suggest that Lorcan is, that Lorcan hides in the religions of all men. But, and to be fair, I think every Manish race in the Elder Scrolls universe has a Lorcanic equivalent. Including Redguard, but they kind of... Don't they kind of mix him up a little bit with something else? Felix ain't here. I'd have to ask Felix.
Not so much. Sep is pretty clearly...
The second serpent,
is pretty clearly a Lorcanic thing. There's even if you want to go far enough into that, there's still the idea of Lorcan as Sithis' son. Because then you've got Sep as second serpent, and then you've got
the first.
Then you got the first serpent, But then again, the Redguard don't split out between Anu and Padme at quite the same subgradient as the other pantheons do, if I recall correctly. But it's still very, very close to being a Lorcanic equivalent. It's just that. It's just that Satak and Satakal and I keep on wanting to say Apep, but it's really not. It's not that part of Egyptian. It possibly is that part of Egyptian mythology, but that's not what the name is in the name of the Akel, the name of the hungry son. Yeah. Sep keeps on wanting to put has Akel, too much of the hungry stomach, which is what creates the void and so on. So that's where the equivalent is. So there's some there's some weirdness about the Sithis Lorcan relationship that isn't
Is
always
it
that
Sep
ambiguous.
that convinced the first Redguard spirits or Regatta spirits to stay on the world instead of
Yes.
going back to the far shores? Was that Sep?
Yes.
Yeah. See, that has always struck me as a Lorcan
Mhm.
thing, that,
Yeah.
Lorcan tricks into staying in the mundane world.
Yeah. Tricks or persuades or
Yeah,
whatever you will.
exactly.
Yep.
Johnny
Mhm.
Anonymous is talking about the Book of Testimonials.
Ooh. That's there are various other, as Johnny has said, there are various other origins
Yeah.
about Lyrock that the ESO has introduced, that because one of them is that one of them that was kind of the accepted answer, the Elder Scrolls 3, was that it was a rock that Sheogorath flung at Vivec City and wasn't expelled from Vivec. The idea that Lyrock is coming out of Vivec that is in this sermon is another one of Vivec's claims to trying to make everything in the world come from here.
Yeah.
So that's why that's going on if you're looking at the actual truth of it.
I always assumed that it was something that had happened before the tribunal, and Vivek in the Johnny Appleseed sort of mythologizing picked it up as this too belongs to me. This is always, everything is about Vivek.
Yeah.
Although if that is the case, then why was Vivek the thing holding it up? I think it possibly relates to Vivek in some fashion, but possibly not the way that Z is describing it here.
Yeah.
Well, there's been a lot of different explanations for that. Let's deal with this one first. So stay with me a full 100 years and I will give you a power that no divinity will dare disobey. It's hard to say exactly what Lorcan was talking about there. It's also unusual that for a second, let's also consider the possibility that the Void Ghost is part, is it part of Lorcan's consciousness? Lorcan never dies exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Even though depending on which religion you're talking about, that's arguable. But it has been pretty much stated outright by Kirkbride that you can't kill a god.
Right.
Not in the traditional sense. So the idea of Lorcan, some avatar of Lorcan hanging around is likely. I mean, avatar, certainly we get Shezarines all the time, so them shits are a dime a dozen.
Maybe I would argue that one, but another conversation.
Before the 100 years was up, Vivec was already looking for Lyrock and found him. Stupid stone, Vivec said, to hide in the scaled blanket is to make a mark on nothing. His bargains are only for ruling kings. Okay. To hide in the scaled blanket, in other words, in the serpent constellation, is to make a mark on nothing. So I assume we're not supposed to, obviously we're not supposed to think about that too literally. So to make a mark on nothing would be sort of like to gain it's pointless, it's fruitless.
Yes.
You can't hiding in other words, Vivec is basically saying hiding here doesn't do you any good.
It's also saying that this is something that affects the material world, which is impermanent and so on and so forth. You're making a mark on something which does not exist. You're on Sithis' realm, the realm of the is not.
That makes sense. Yeah, I always took it as like writing on air.
Yeah, all truth fades into air, or something like that, from whatever the quote is from the Communist Manifesto. But
mark on anti-stars, aka black holes. Oh, could be
interesting.
Yeah.
And his bargains only being for ruling kings. That makes me think that it goes back to the idea of Lorcan as the origin point for Chim. The whole idea of
Sure. Or also, Lorcan, being an agent of change, is only interested in making bargains with people who will change the world.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Who are people of great influence. So if you're not like the main character, basically, then Lorcan's
Yeah.
not going to do you any good. And,
Yeah, go away.
and also Vivec is basically saying, hey, Lorcan's lying to you, which is kind of his modus operandi, is what the dude does.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Vivec sent the Hortator to the heavens to shave Lyrock asunder by the named axe. That axe again, man. The easiest thing to do, man. Send Nerevar to breach heaven by violence.
Although is the named axe and the rueful axe the same thing?
I don't think so. I don't think they.
No, sorry, rueful axe is the rueful axe is a Daedric artifact, but that's not mentioned in the sermons. Having done a quick search, but
Nope.
so which. Yeah, no,
never got his axe in Morrowind.
No, there's never. Ironically enough, there is never a title given to Nerevar's axe in the sermons.
He named it, but we don't get to know what he named it.
Yeah.
This is interesting.
Well, it's a weapon of Nerevar's, and therefore, it's not as important as anything.
As
else.
Nerevar made peace with the South Pole Star of Thieving and the North Pole Star of Warriors, and the Third Pole Star, which existed only in the ether, which was governed by the apprentice of Magnus the Sun. So these are 3 actual stars in the constellations that we're talking about.
Right.
The South Pole Star of Thieving is apparently Archaea, according to UESP. I don't know if that's reliable.
No.
That doesn't make sense to me.
The Serpent constellation consists of 4 unstars, which is not relegated to being in the night sky during a particular time of year. The unstars that form the Serpent move about the sky and do not emit varliance. Serpent's motions are considered to be unpredictable, though they can be predicted to a degree. Thank you. A great sentence. Those born under the sign of the Serpent are thought to have no characteristics in common with beings or...
Yeah, I'm not sure that that these stars would necessarily be part of the Serpent constellation, would they?
Well, all of the depictions of the Serpent constellation involve 4 stars total.
Okay.
1 to the south, 1 to the north, and then 1 sort of off to the left, and then 1 in the middle. I think that's what we're talking about here, is that Nerevar has made peace with the 4 different with 3 of the 4 different stars. 1 of Thieving, 1 of Warriors, and 1 that is governed by the apprentice of Magnus the Sun. So in other words, a thief, a mage, and a king.
Right.
Which is really weird because
red,
those
blue, green.
Yeah, and because those 3 constellations, or those 3 stars, they're archetypes of the 3 guardian constellations within the night sky. So you have a microcosm of the rest of the constellations within the Serpent.
Yeah. If you've made a deal with those 3, then you've made a deal with all of them.
Yes.
Have you considered that UASB could be talking about the planets? Could be, but I don't think that but they're referring to, in this case, Archaea, Akatosh, and Julianos.
Akatosh is the Eye of the Warrior.
Yeah, which
no.
Yeah, that's true. Archaea could be the eye of the thief birth sign. Maybe that's what they're thinking. That which is governed by... Okay, anyway, they gave him leave to wander among their charges and gave him red sight by which to find Lyrock in the hidden heaven.
Given leave to wander among their charges, the etymology of planet makes me wonder there. I don't know whether that's anything in particular, because planet is literally is derived from the Greek for wanderer, because the stars moved.
Yagni's pointing out that Archaea marks the Eye of the Thief constellation.
Yeah.
Maybe the game mechanics are actually hints as to the hierarchies of the Magna Gei, or warrior, thief, mage made of other constellations themselves made of stars. Yeah. The 3 constellation, the 3 guardian constellations are each individually have a planet in them.
Yep.
And then they have all the other constellations underneath them. So he's been given leave to wander amongst all of the constellations and all of the planets.
Yeah, so that makes more sense. That okay, so the idea here is that okay, so I see what we're talking about. I thought at first we were talking about 3 of the 4 stars in the Serpent constellation, but you guys you've convinced me. We're talking about the 3 Guardian constellations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which means that it's the stars more broadly.
Yeah, so now he has permission to wander around in heaven, unlike the first time when you just walked up there and just started swinging.
Exactly.
Although he didn't wander around in heaven, he wandered around on the moons specifically.
Well, yeah,
which is again different.
No, wait, there was a thing where he was right before he fell down.
It's the Parliament of Craters who said, "Go away, your appearance is decidedly solar," which is the moons.
And then
Yagni makes a good point. Vivec,
the Hortator was still trying to subdue the heavens with an axe. He was thrown out of the Library of the Sun. That's where he was. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
And Yagni makes a good point. Vivec could be claiming responsibility for the creation of the Guardian constellations. It's a very oblique way of doing it.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, I mean,
sure, yeah.
That sounds something like Vivec would do.
Yeah. Yep.
I did that shit. Yep. Vivec's going to tell us that he was a friggin' star volleyball player.
Yeah.
George Soros of Vardenfell. Yeah.
Oh, this might be one to bear in mind when we look at Sermon 37 to some degree.
Yep.
Just because I see that they gave him leave to wander among their charges and gave him red sight. That talks about red. That brings me in mind of redshift, and we literally have something signal blue shift in Sermon 37. So, and redshift is moving further away. I'm not sure whether red sight is necessarily something to do with it.
It could be. It could also be red sight in the respect that it's supposed to be it's red because of murder. So this is like a red sight, as in like you can find your target, using red sight.
Yeah.
I wondered about the redshift thing though, so thank you for bringing that up.
Mm-hmm. That we'll have to chew on a bit more when we get to 37, because that feels like that needs time to marinate a bit.
The problem with redshift and blue shift is that I sort of have a tendency to really pick it apart in terms of like relativistic physics, and like I'm not sure how well it's going to hold up, and I'm scared to death at 37. I really am. So, by chance, Nerevar met the Void Ghost first, who told him he was in the wrong place, to which Hortator said, "Me or you?" And the Void Ghost said, "Both." This sermon does not tell what else was said between these bastards. I asked Kirkbride about that, and he said the Void Ghost is him.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, now, Kirkbride has always sort of identified as Lorcan, and Pullman has sort of always identified as Akatosh. So the two of them together, a lot. Yes, it does. And so the two of them together, like every time you read about Akatosh and Lorcan, it's a little bit of both of them. Awesome. And so do imagine that this is Lorcan. That's fine. But in my head, this is literally Kirkbride self-inserting into the
meta. Yeah,
just a little bit of meta humor for you.
Yeah.
Lyrock, however, used the confusion to launch his own attack on the city god Vivec. He was hastened by all 3 of the Black Guardians, who wanted him swiftly gone. Okay, which Black Guardians are these?
The Anticipations. That's the only 3.
I have wondered about that.
I can think of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What other 3 would there be? Unless we're talking the 3 Guardian constellations themselves. So that would be Akatosh for the warrior as the eye, RK as the thief, and I don't know who is the eye of the mage off the top
Apparently
of my head.
Magnus, according to this.
But Magnus is the sun.
Mage.
How is the sun part of a star constellation?
Yeah.
Oh, Julianos, according to Yagni. That would make a whole heap more sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But RK, Akatosh, and Julianos as big warriors or against Vivec or opponents of Vivec. That's that's not something that's readily associated with, because Tribunal mythology does not go into a whole heap about the Aedra specifically. That doesn't give us a whole heap to work with.
I guess you could say that the constellations are Black Guardians. The guardian constellations because they are the stars in the sky, and it's mostly black around them.
Yeah, that was my assumption. If we're talking about stars and constellations and guardians, then yeah, that's all I can bring out there.
Yeah, that's a head scratcher. I'm gonna have to run around that one for a little while.
Okay, no, and sorry, Jagni has also brought up a bit more clarity with regards to why Julianos. The third pole star is governed by the apprentice of Magnus the Sun, not Magnus the Sun itself.
And that's Julianos. Okay.
Yeah, that it makes sense that it's Julianos. Anyway, given Julianos' sphere,
his idiom.
Yeah, I would almost be tempted to say it would be something like Xerxes, but that's me leaning very, very Moorish and probably too much because history and everything else.
See, well, I mean, UESP is referring to these stars as, from their Cyrodiilic religion counterpart. That may not necessarily be a smart move. It still, to this day, seems like... it still seems like to this day that that everybody, even people in Elder Scrolls development, kind of default to the Cyrodiilic pantheon as like the default. I don't know if that's a good idea or not. Anyway, it's certainly what I do. but like I said, I don't think it's a good idea. Anyway, so they wanted him swiftly gone, though they meant no hostility to the Lord of the Middle Air. Oh, okay, so it could be the actual three Guardians who are just like, look, you just need to get the fuck out of here, and you want to go fight who? Vivec? Whatever.
Which is, again, is an interesting contrast between the encounter on the moon, encounter with the Parliament of Craters and all that shebang, because they were actively hostile, so something has changed. At least with regards to Nerevar here. Although, precisely what?
Well, the thing is, Lyrock was hastened out of heaven by the three Guardians. They want Lyrock gone.
Okay. But then again,
or it could have been like, we saw what that Nerevar dude did on the moons. Let's get him the fuck out of here. You're crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He hits everything with an axe. He doesn't give a shit.
Yeah, it's a question of if you're gone, we can get rid of Nerevar quicker. It's nothing. It's nothing you did. It's just your company that you keep.
It's like people throwing out whoever John Wick is coming for. Get out of here.
Yeah.
So the citizenry of Vivec screamed as they saw a shooting star come down out of the sky hole like a toll road of hell. Are these AC/DC lyrics? I have to ask.
They could be.
Yeah, seriously.
Coming out of the sky hole, the great big sky anus I'm thinking of the first Avengers movie here. I'm sorry. I'm
also wondering whether it's actually a nod to Magnus, because Magnus is the sky hole.
So, well, maybe, but I would also suggest that it's a sky hole in the respect that it's a big black hole of darkness, which is the Serpent constellation.
I never could decide between those.
Is Magnus a hole or not? Oh, he's a hole. I'll call that dude a hole to his face. I'm on the toll road to hell. Yeah.
I'm on the toll.
Oh, I don't have my guitar plugged in. And so Vivec merely raised his hand and froze Lyrock just above the city, and then he pierced the monster with Buatra. The practice of piercing the second aperture is now forbidden. So this is I can't help but think that things like these little that they put into these parentheses are like the Tribunal Temple coming in and going like with a red pen and being like, and no butt sex. Like,
well, they did with Boethia. They did with not Boethia, the real Baron Zaya, sorry.
That's true.
The Morrowind edition of the real Baron Zaya cut out the Khajiit sex.
Yeah.
Interesting. I had never considered that before. It always struck me as funny that Vivec would be so prudish about all of these rules about sex. But if you assume that the tribunal priest put those in later,
I think so.
Which makes, and it really does track, because if you've got Vivec as your deity and you're trying to teach people to be moral, and you think that avoiding sex is moral,
Vivek's not the one to talk to.
Why would the tribunal consider avoiding certain types of sex moral if Vivec is one of their prime deities?
Because
why did that happen?
Because Almalexia and Sothasil are the other two. And you know Sothasil's asexual. He doesn't fuck at all. And then
despite the Dr. Manhattan reference.
Well, I don't believe that that sounds like fiction to me. And I think Sothasil gets all of his dopamine from reading. And and Almalexia, hey, that's a married woman, dude.
Well, and she's got her image husband state.
Yeah, her husband image state. Yeah.
Yeah, her hard light, whatever they are.
Her Toshiba husbands. Yeah.
Yes.
So Lyrock sees that Vivec is also city. Yes. The Felix, the sermons intentionally blur the line between Vivec City and Vivec. Yes. They're supposed to be the same thing in the respect that, in probably a similar way that Sothasil, Almalexia, and Vivec are all one organism. But I think I mentioned this in the New Orleans school about how cities during old ancient Roman times were considered to have gods that inhabited the cities. Like the city itself was had or was governed by a god, and so yeah. And I mean, this is twice so far that we've had one of Vivek's children pick a fight with the city itself. City Face wanted a piece of that shit, and now Lyrock is just showing up to smash. As Ace, yeah, Johnny, I agree.
What do you mean by Ace?
Sothasil as asexual.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But what could you do to a god that would be like throwing a big rock at a city? Well, I mean, if you destroy the city, if Lyrock lands like a meteor and punches a big fuck off hole in the middle of Vivec City, then we've got some cities have dark guardian angels in Jewish legends. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maybe that's just a fundamental misunderstanding of how the city-god relationship works on the part of Lyrock or whatever hurled Lyrock, depending on it. The idea of, I know how I can take down Vivec, let's just destroy their city. And the thought of, if the city is destroyed, then you take down the god. Then, which we haven't had any indication that that's necessarily the case, but it's a reasonable deduction or induction from everything that's gone on.
I think it was Roman armies used to pray to the god of the city they were about to invade.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they would set up shrines and everything outside of the city and then pray to that god and say, hey, we're going to come and fuck your city up, but we'll do good things for you when we occupy it.
Yeah.
So maybe don't hold the gate so hard. Yeah.
Was it a case of, please forgive us for what we're about to do?
Might have been that too.
Or that will be a better deal for you, please let us in. I don't know which of the two it was.
If the city is destroyed, can you kick one stage back on the promise of the siege? I don't know if the promise of the siege relies on having the city. Maybe it does. Yagni, you know what the answer is? Whatever is the most interesting solution. Whatever suits the storyline is probably the thing. I mean, I know that's a cop-out answer. I know. But the fact is, personally, I like both. I like that once you achieve a certain level of and again, the promise of the siege is not supposed to be, it's not World of Warcraft. You don't gain levels and then, get your powers and everything. I mean, that's not what it is. It's steps like, I don't know. And then, and you know what? Fuck it. Maybe it is there too. I mean, I could think of it being interesting in both. Like if you reach a certain level of the promise of the siege and you've gained all the wisdom and everything that you've gained from that, or power, whatever you want to call it, and then something happens to literally knock you back into egg or image, or you go from city back to man again, like we're suggesting here, or from city back to God, excuse me. Then yeah, maybe that's like maybe you get shrunk as well if something like that happens, or maybe it doesn't matter at all and you just build another city. I don't know. It could be like losing a technology level in a real-time strategy game, like, oh, you just have to build back up again, and until you build the city back again, you can't, you can't build Dark Templars. And I mean, how are you going to win without DTs? I mean, that's just ridiculous. Anyway, I mean, make sure you're mining out of gas, obviously, but Sotha still has influence in the fourth era precisely because of the Conqueror City. Good point. When behind Dark Shrine, that's right, Baka.
There's right. A level of video game references here that I'm not getting at all.
This is StarCraft Brood War. It's the greatest game ever made, and you owe it to yourself to get deep into it. It's absolutely without question the perfect game. Because I mean I know Baka and I are both getting flashbacks from Day 9 dailies right now, so we're just we learned to be a better gamer. So another sort of probably this professional house like a place to buy food on the way up to the mountain.
Yeah, I'm always going to see it as like a convenience store now.
Okay, but
yeah,
I think I see where I think I know where James is going. Yeah, is it a way station up the mountain?
Yeah,
like that. Okay. Even Stella watched Sean back in the day. Everybody watched Sean, baby. Day 9 is fucking corner of the internet. That's my boy.
Yeah, but the idea of the provisional house being a way stop on the way to enlightenment, I certainly think that's how Vivec imagined it was going to be.
Yeah.
But I don't know whether it actually functioned that way.
Well, I'm actually really glad that we're talking about this because we're about to get right neck deep into that shit. So, when Nerevar returned, he saw the frozen comet above his lord's city. He asked whether or not Vivec wanted it removed. I would have done so myself if I wanted, silly hortatory Thilly. I shall keep it there with its last intention intact, so that if the love of the people of this fair city for me ever disappear, so shall the power that holds back their destruction. Nerevar said, love is under your will only. Okay, so there's two things going on here, and one of them is, and we'll do the first easy one, and then we'll talk to James about the going up the mountain. So love is under your will only. That's kind of and Vivec approves of this by saying Vivec smiled and told the Hortator that he had become a minister of truth. So these are minister of truth being members of the Ministry of Truth, which are the people in Lyrock. What do we know about truth?
It's violence.
A great hammer. Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
So love is under your will only may or may not have been the right thing to say at that point. But it does allude to the idea, because the first thing that you interpret this as is that Vivec is basically saying people will survive, people can find happiness and so on, but only if I will it, only if I say it's allowed to happen, which is a very, dictatorish thing to do.
Yes.
And I'm not necessarily saying that that's not what's happening here. I mean, I completely buy that Vivec would do that shit. Again, we are kind of watching Vivec work out their psychology, sort of in their issues here in the 36 lessons, and so the idea of Vivec being so damaged that the whole world has to obey their every whim, just of course,
Yeah.
But then the idea of love is under your will only being talking about love as in enlightenment, as in spiritual progress, as in true creation and art, in more the sort of Crowleyan sense of love under will. Love being the perfect action that goes in a complete agreement with God, with the will of God, and is therefore flawless and wonderful and always guaranteed to win. What Vivec is kind of saying here is that to summarize, what Vivec is referring to here is the idea that the Ministry of Truth and Lie Rock is central to the achievement of working under the will of God.
At least as far as Vivec is concerned.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah, 100%. Yeah, if we're assuming here that when I say God, I'm talking about Vivec.
Okay.
So when Vivec builds Lie Rock by piercing it with her aperture, and or piercing it with Muatra, and creating this prison in which people are re-educated in the most 1984 way you can possibly think of. Then what Vivec is basically building is a anvil upon which people can be pummeled by the truth and reshaped into something that can then obtain love under will. So in terms of climbing the mountain, this Lie Rock becomes a central point at which you have to experience, a trial that you have to experience as you climb the mountain. You know?
Okay.
It's one of the reasons why, if you look at Lie Rock, it sits in front of Vivec's Pagoda. If you think of Vivec's Pagoda as the mountain, which I would encourage you to do, then getting to Vivec's Pagoda, before you can even climb the steps, you have to go through Lie Rock. I mean, it's not literally true,
you have to
but
go
I'm saying,
under it, but yeah.
you have to
Yeah,
go
I
under
see what
it.
you're saying. Yeah.
You see what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
you go under.
Yeah.
Vivec probably imagined that it was going to be a new Amaranth. Ooh. A giant turd being Amaranth. I don't know if...
No.
Yeah, he makes it easier for others in the future, possibly.
It's certainly... I don't know, if you're going along the lines of... Oh, I can't remember the precise reasoning by which you get there, but it's the idea of which... it revolves in some creative reinterpretation of the text of the book Sithis. The idea that Lorcan appeared for all the world like an Aedra created, which implies that they create their own sphere and so on. I've seen that kind of parlayed as Lig is Lorcan's plane in the sense of an Aedric plane in some way, shape, or form, but it doesn't quite work unless you kind of spin Lie Rock as an attempt to do that sort of thing and to therefore create your own world and build that into an Amaranth in some way, shape, or form. It's by no means the same thing in how we understand it, but it's an attempt at world creation on some level if you're going to stretch the metaphor absolutely to breaking point. Oh, Yagni was talking about the provisional house. Okay.
And it does...
Yeah, so and where they create the provisional house sounds like they were trying to create a new Amaranth. Yes.
Yeah, because the process is similar. Yeah.
Yeah, a large part of me that would argue that it's the other way around, that because of real-world causality, the creation of the provisional house gave MK the blueprint for creating an Amaranth. But that's just me.
Felix, Lorcan's sphere is Mundus.
Yep.
So is it one of the 12 worlds? Yeah. It's Nirn. So yeah.
Yeah.
So it's all of them.
I guess. Yeah, isn't it? Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, they're all smooshed together.
Yeah. When Lie Rock falls, it's literally the hammer being brought down. That's kind of what I meant. Yeah. Because the thing is, like, Vivec, I don't think sees a difference between when we say that Vivec made it easier for people to achieve Amaranth. I think Vivec made it possible for Amaranth to happen, but saying that Vivec made it easier is not accurate.
Not
Vivec made it obscenely hard, but it had to be obscenely hard. You had to the Dunbar had to literally lose their entire fucking planet.
Yeah.
And move to one of the shittiest places in the world. Very Dune-esque, very Golden Path, because Vivec had to make things so unpleasant that everybody had to pack up and leave for basically Arrakis and live in a place where there are literally worms digging out, huge chunks of the planetoid, and Frost Dune off your bingo sheets, everyone. Oh yeah, and then
Yes.
and then the only way they could be defeated is using salt, which is something that I think they derive from waters. I think tears was the idea. I can't remember. Something in the back of my head is saying that the salt that they used to kill the worms was gotten from anguish, from tears. And it's like, I mean, yeah.
And for those of you unaware, we're talking about
Coda
here.
Yeah, we're talking about Coda here. Yeah.
Yep. I was sort of, my mind immediately goes to and later, and by that I mean much later, my reign will be seen as an act of the highest love.
Right.
Yeah, from Sermon 35. But we'll get to that, I'm sure. That's all part of that same milieu of you will go through suffering in order to have something better out the other end of it.
Yeah, we'll deal. We're 35's heading down the barrel too, so we're gonna.
Oh yeah.
Tears of salty water is painful memory. Yeah.
Yep.
So they had to suffer in order to have a sufficient pain, to conquer a world that was actively eating them. Our original idea for Secunda was putting it on. We're actually gonna put it on. We're gonna put Tatterdemelion on fucking what's it called, the Red Moon.
Massa,
and we were gonna make Masser look like it was the surface of Masser was supposed to look like a giant corpse. Just bodies and arms and legs and rib cages and gore. But when you get up to him, it looks like all that stuff is made out of rock. Natural rock formations. It's just from afar, it looks like, what's his name? Zadetsky? I can't remember his name.
No.
Polish artist. Zdzisław Beksinski. Yeah. Which is probably a massacre of his name, but that was the idea.
Okay.
And so anyway, but Vivec smiled and told the Hortator he had become a minister of truth. So a minister of truth, therefore, has to support the idea, or has to understand the idea that Vivec's will is what allows people to exist, basically.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the summary of 33. If you think about what we've learned in the previous two sermons, it should be pretty obvious at this point that what Vivec is doing is building a reality.
Yep.
In order to yeah, Johnny. However, yeah, Polish is a tough language. It's he's sort of, Vivec is sort of creating a reality of an environment or a condition in which things can occur, and it's very possible to argue that not even Vivec fully understood at this point, while he was creating all this stuff, what exactly was being created or why.
Yeah, that's fair.
Part of the idea behind Love Under Will is that you are not working with a goal in mind. You don't worry about what you're building or how good it's going to be. You just create in whatever method you can. There's very much a blurry line here between art and work. It's all supposed to be very similar.
Or at least in Vivec may be getting that wrong in this sense, because the sense of love is under my will only, love is under Vivec's will. It's the sense of blind trust in Vivec almost, in how this is put across, because it's a case of you will love me, you will go along with what I say.
Yeah,
and
you don't have a choice.
It will carry on like that.
Yeah,
because if you don't, I'll drop a fucking rock on your head.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then I mean, but in Vivec's case, I'm pretty sure probably what's happening here is Vivec saying, well, if you know, sooner or later you're going to realize that blindly following the will of God is the right thing to do, because you can't, it's very difficult to create in complete compliance with the will of God if you are distrustful of what God wants. You have to put your faith in the Lord. You have to blindly trust that God is going to take you down the right path and make it, again, if we think about things in terms of art, that God's going to have you choose the right colors and the right brushes and the right technique, and everything's going to go down on the canvas where it's supposed to happen. As Bob Ross likes to put it, there are no accidents, there are only happy accidents, you know?
No mistakes, only happy
No
accidents.
mistakes, only happy accidents. And yeah, no, I don't think I will. Yeah, the memes write themselves. And so what Vivec is kind of doing is kind of helping the Dunmer in a Vivecian sense of help to, you know, look, you can sit there and try to understand me all day and worry about whether or not you're doing my will or, you know, obeying me properly or anything, or I could just hang a big ass fuck off rock over your head and you can just do it. You could just obey, you know? And eventually, if you just give up altogether and just obey the will of me, of your God, then you won't have to worry about the rock, because you'll be doing the job right. You know, if you have no secrets, if you have nothing to hide, then you don't need to worry about people looking into you. You know?
Yeah, there's sort of there's very much a feeling of kind of the mythic side of the sword of Damocles here, which I'm shocked we haven't brought up so far.
That's a great point. Sword of Damocles. Let me write that down.
I'd never thought about that before. That's pretty brilliant.
Yeah, because the exact formation of that story is yes, Backer, the poop of Damocles, but is that the king Damocles, his life looks so easy, so free and just so simple, and then someone comes up and how is this so easy for you? And then Damocles just points up and there's a sword hanging above him all the time, or more or less that. And the kind of the takeaway is kind of that it's not, or it's the pressure of the sword that does the thing. And so it feels very much like that sort of pressure is what's allowing it to happen. Rock is functioning in that manner quite explicitly. And again, I'm really surprised that it's only occurred to me now.
Yeah,
but yeah. I'm sure there is a lot that can be brought out of that.
The poop of Damocles.
That's pretty brilliant. I'll have to look into that.
I already chose to live on an active volcano and worship gods of murder and betrayal, so I'm sure they're already been to buying Vivec's bridge. Yeah, I guess this probably wasn't a very hard argument. They probably would have just looked up at the giant meteor and been like, that's just one more thing.
It's one more, yeah.
Whatever. Yeah. Did you see the bugs I had for breakfast this morning? This ain't nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm eating bug eggs. This is whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay. So we've also found a couple of new things for me to read. That's great. Did we mention the blog? What's his name?
Which blog?
The new stuff. Yeah, we did. Yeah. We did.
Cool.
All right, it's always fucking something. Yeah. Same guys, same shit, different day. That's what it is. So 34 is up next, and that's going to be a whole lot of fun.
Yes.
We're actually going to skip straight from. We're actually going to do one kid and then another kid immediately. So 34 is where we get Golgamore Jill.
Yeah, I hope I can be here. I don't want to miss Golgamore Jill.
Yeah. And there's a lot to talk about there. And also the true intention of Vivec and hidden guilt and etc. So we will see you guys there. Yes. I guess Felix couldn't make it today. And
this is where Felix arrives just as we're wrapping.
Just in time. So yeah, thanks everybody for showing up and watching, and we will see you all, let's see, not on the 30th, but on the 6th of January is when we're going to try and be back. So thanks everybody for watching. Try. Yeah, emphasis on the try. Please don't get mad if we can't make it. Love you, everybody. Bye.
Cool. Bye.
Bye-bye.